I agree with the common phrase that there is a clear distinction between being alone and being lonely. Being alone means you must enjoy your own company, and it is generally considered as a stopgap and a liminal space between moments with people. Something temporary and something intangible. It'll pass, it'll happen when you least expect it, and so you don't expect it, and it happens. But what happens when it doesn't? I'm inspired to write and to talk about this because I was recently pondering the phrase, "wherever you go, there you are," a quote that is reportedly over 2,000 years old, and one such so integral to the human experience that it has withstood the test of time and continues to resonate with people today, one such of those people being me. Lover girl, girl next door, needy, sensitive, empath, too much. I have in mind a particular person, a girl specifically, who will resonate with all of these words. I was nothing if not one of those girls. Am one of those girls. Someone who feels things so deeply that it sometimes feels like the universe is mocking me. Something such a blessing and such a curse, as I'm sure if you're watching this you'll know. You probably know what it's like to be picked last in sports, to be denounced as the family pet when people are playing house, and to spend lunchtime sat in the teacher's office with them. I illustrate seemingly silly examples like these to conjure up a remembering in you of all of those moments that got etched into your soul and whispered, "Why am I not good enough?" These whisperings, when left unheard, as time passes, turn into screams that we can't ignore. These can manifest into, to name two very different examples, anxious attachment, where you latch onto people before they leave you so they won't leave you alone with these vulnerable parts of yourselves, or avoiding attachment, where you push people away before they can touch any real, tangible or vulnerable part of yourself. We are all trying to escape vulnerability. And picture me, a few years ago, I could not be alone with my thoughts, was under chronic anxiety and depression as a result. I'd numb myself out. I would have earphones in whilst reading a book, whilst watching a TV show. I had no room to think. I was a maladaptive daydreamer, constantly in a fake scenario with the latest victim of my obsessions. I would ask to go to the toilets during lessons as a pre-teenager just so I could read and escape this world of reality back into fairy tale land. I was barely a teenager at the time, and so this isn't the typical escapism story of, unfortunate substance or alcohol, drug abuse, etc. But it's an escape nevertheless, and nevertheless I could not be on my own. I don't think there was a single moment for years when I didn't force myself to have a crush on someone, and which is something I feel like a lot of you will relate with, needing to fill that hole within yourself with someone else. My entire self-value and worth depended externally, as it does for so many of us. If I wasn't being seen, if I wasn't being perceived, even in my sadness, then who was I? What value did I have? I'm not going to talk about in this video all of the surface level reasons why being alone is a good thing. I don't think concepts such as self-love, independence, confidence, fake it till you make it, life maxing, etc., or romanticising your life, which will link into these things of being alone, I don't think they need any more explanation due to the vast amount of resources on these concepts already. Instead, I'm going deeper. For the moments when you've sat there after all your shadow work, or your journaling, or your solo dates, realising that you still find yourself craving external validation, you still want to be recognised doing all of these things, you're still lonely, and you can't escape that uncomfortable ache in your ribs, suggesting to you, whispering to you that something deeper is wrong. This is your human conditioning. This is the importance of being lonely. Number 1. Source, and why you feel lonely despite being surrounded by people. Source, or wholeness, is the concept that we are all born connected to the divine intelligence that governs all life. Whether you call this God, the universe, or something else is entirely up to you. This is the spiritual truth that we are all connected to and not separate from the divine intelligence that created all life, or that is life, because God and the universe are made up of atoms and energy, which we are also made up of. Then we cannot be separate from this intelligence. We are merely expressions of it. Even if you're not spiritual or you don't believe in this concept, I'm ultimately mentioning it to illustrate an explanation or an example of the futility of seeking something outside of ourselves, which is most commonly validation. This seeking someone outside of ourselves to fix the parts of us which we believe are broken and need fixing, relying on the external to fix the internal. Of course, we are to an extent biologically primed to seek safety and companionship in others, but this primal nature must also be accepted with the duality that spiritually our soul is born connected to everything and is therefore whole, So if we accept this duality, how then do we become so attached to other people? Well, through the introduction of the ego, this primal brain which is attempting to keep us safe, no matter what. When we go through an experience that our brain perceives as negative, our ego, our survival compass, will ultimately kick in and want to naturally protect us from experiencing that negativity again so that we can continue to survive. In this example, when you are perceived to be rejected by others, for example by being picked last for a game in school, your brain wants to keep you safe, and it does so by attempting to align your self-perception with the perception others have of you in order that you won't be kicked out of the community. When others treat you as less, your brain will perceive that as a signal that you are less, especially at an early age, and internalize this, so that further rejection will not hurt as much, amongst other reasons. This also serves as a confirmation bias. When you have the limiting belief that, for example, you're not good enough, it's designed to keep you small and therefore safe according to our limited fear-based design. Therefore, your brain looks for more information that will confirm this belief. For example, you may perceive a tone as personally negative towards you when someone speaks, when, objectively, there is no evidence to support this. However, this will be used as evidence to reinforce the subjective belief that you have about yourself. All of this to offer an explanation on why those who have such low self-worth, which is so many of us, have such a large dependency on others and cannot be alone. I would also like to add that the recent surge and push towards things such as solo dating and journaling in order to spend time alone and be confident, although I believe to be well-intentioned, I also believe to be a vehicle of some performative self-partnership. One could make a video such as this and declare to the world and their peers, wow, look how secure I am in myself, look how much time I can spend alone. Will you love me now that I don't need you, and will you want me because I want myself? We believe that the only way our pain can be taken away, the only way that we can be fixed, is by seeking the same hands that broke us to fix us, and denying our own power over ourselves. If we can finally prove to our peers, those who we have attachments to, and to the outside world that we are worthy, then we will be good enough. Then we will be loved. This creates an attachment to external validation that I think all of us have or have had to some degree. And I believe this is part of a collective trauma of us constantly persecuting each other throughout history, which has created a constant dismissal of the external state in favour of looking outward. No matter how much we look to others for our source and happiness, when this temporary fix has worn off, we remain deep down lonely. This is why, for example, people who can't meet themselves jump from a relationship to relationship because they cannot face being alone, they cannot face themselves, and they are constantly outsourcing their sense of self for other people. They need to be fixed through other people. You can put ice cream on top of shit, but when the ice cream melts, there's still shit underneath. Section 2. The importance of loneliness. If our perpetual loneliness comes from believing that we are not sourced to ourselves and that we must seek something outside of ourselves to be whole, then it is therefore natural to assume that to stop this, we should just remember that we are sourced to ourselves to say, right? Of course, this is much easier said than done, as is all things, and when we are embarking on this feat, it is very, very painful, which is why barely anyone has truly accomplished it. I, for one, have only scratched the surface of this, and still my being and myself and my ideas have changed immeasurably. With this program of separation being so deeply ingrained into the whole concept in this three-dimensional world of being human, it is the way that the masses and our egos can control us and keep us small by believing that we need to become something, consume something, buy something before we are worthy, instead of this being our natural and perfect, unadulterated state. It is one of the hardest things to overcome, this illusion of hierarchy, this illusion of separation. I believe that becoming true source to yourself is often actualized by having your attachments ripped away from you, which serves as a catalyst point where you are either forced to confront yourself or run back to the next thing and stay in shallowness. At least this is the turning point that has happened to so many of us who were so attached to the external that having it stripped away from us brutally and painfully was the only way that we were forced to confront that pain inside of us that we were running from. For example, you lose the relationship you were so attached to, you lose the job that you thought was your entire security, and maybe it was. Losing these things, at least for me, physically felt like I was dying. So it's all well and good for me to sit here and say, oh, you need to be lonely, you need to become source to yourself. But I'm not going to pretend like it isn't one of the most soul-sucking, bone-breaking experiences to have, having everything that you thought was you, everything you placed your sense of self on, be ripped out of your hands by the universe. It is the universe, God, whatever, giving you an opportunity to meet yourself and grow, or run into the next substance, job, relationship, etc., and repeat the cycle all over again until it gets so painful that you are forced to break the cycle and look within. The reason why 99% of the population are stuck in this loop of perpetual loneliness is because the hardest thing to do is to choose to sit with yourself instead of running away from source back to shallow survival. I appreciate that, and I assure you that I have been there. The importance of finding yourself in this critical, cataclysmic turning point, the importance of finding yourself lonely, is that you have nothing else diverting your attention. You have nobody else you can project your desires and insecurities and sense of self onto. It is a rare window of opportunity, not just a liminal space. Do you want to meet yourself? Because the only way out is through. Section 3, how to meet yourself. I, of course, can only speak from my limited, thus far, experience and tell you how I personally have begun to meet myself. Firstly, as I've previously already alluded to, I would say that you have to, if not already, have reached a type of breaking point where you have decided that enough is enough and that you must change. This keeps your work disciplined. When motivation fails, when you know that there is simply no other option for you but to grow, change and heal. This is deep work that I could only do through having simply no other option. I was so addicted to the validation of others. If you still feel the pull to go back to the toxic ex, job, habit, etc., and this desire you feel is larger than your need to come home to yourself, excluding addiction, for which I strongly urge you to get proper help for, then I would say it's worth experimenting with the idea of going back until you are sick of it, until you reach some kind of I can't do this anymore, because that is the only thing that will push you through such perpetual but necessary loneliness. There are, of course, the standard practices of shadow work, journaling, therapy, etc., which are helpful and beneficial alongside deeper practices such as somatic practices, which I personally am versed in, where you finally give your pain the voice that you have been covering with the hands of others. You can tell I'm a poet, can't you? Simply put, somatic practices are about feeling, and as emotion is energy in motion, when these emotions are not felt, they become stuck in the body and stored as trauma. Therefore, if this traumatic energy is vibrating on a certain level due to the vibrational scale, then, as you attract what you are, not what you want. If you have that limiting frequency stuck inside you as trauma, then you physically cannot up level to the next frequency, the frequency of what you want and what you desire in your dream life, without releasing and letting go of these stuck traumas and limiting beliefs, which are essentially stored emotion. The initial emotions of pain, anger, sadness at the core wound, at your, for example, initial childhood rejection, have become stuck and stored and multiplied. Losing it feels like losing part of your identity until you remember that it was merely an identification. You are whole, infinite, complete. You are made up of an energy that can never be created or destroyed, and that is divinely connected to that which has made and is all life. You are not a trauma or a limiting belief, and you are more than that. You are whole, you are everything. This is a key mantra and a key point that has really helped me wade through this very stuck and sticky emotions. Feeling the pain, but not allowing yourself to identify with it. As in, not allowing it to become your identity. That is when you become a victim and stuck in shame and the emotions of anger and survival. This makes it easier as an empath and a highly sensitive person to not let your feelings and pain consume you. Because your emotion is energy in motion, and you are the vessel for it to pass through. This lack of identifying with the emotion as your identity allows you to let the emotion pass through. I am not an expert on all types of somatic practices, but instinctually we are all very adept at two somatic practices, which are crying and breathing. Yes, breathing can be a somatic practice, feeling into and breathing into your emotions, and we all know how good it feels after a very long and painful cry. I personally cannot take credit for my own extra somatic practice, which has been the pillar of my entire healing journey, and that is this thing called Quantum Freedom Healing by Melanie Tonia Evans. This is not sponsored in any way by anyone that I'm mentioning. This is merely what helps me. Touch, I think, is also a very interesting way to heal, to which I will point you to this absolute pioneer of women's nervous system regulation. Merely researching or looking on YouTube at some somatic meditations, heart center meditations, etc. is a useful place to start your own research, or merely even start with journaling, and that will bring up emotions for you to feel into, which is a somatic practice. As no one size fits all here, the above is what I personally encourage, but what I encourage more than any of this is for you to find out what works for you and do your own research. I hope that you managed to get something out of this video, and I don't need you to necessarily agree with all of what I'm saying. I'm merely hoping that something of what I have said has resonated with you and is able to help you for the better in your quest against loneliness and to offer you a different perspective. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.